Okay, so you chose specialist mathematics, and maybe that means now you're freaking out a little bit, or you're not sure what to expect, or you've heard so many things about how difficult the course is, how it's the hardest course in high school, and you want to be prepared, so you've stumbled upon this video. We're going to talk a lot about what you actually need to know to do this course, how hard is the course actually, and what are some things that are going to help you like hit the ground running a little bit when it comes to understanding the content and what's going to be expected. Now, I should say there's going to be when we're looking at some of the syllabus documents, there's going to be quite a lot of stuff here relating to Queensland. But this also does apply to Victoria, South Australia, Western Australia, all of your other main states that are doing specialist mathematics. There's going to be quite a lot of relevance to all of it because it's the same common theme for why people find it difficult. The first question we're going to look at is how hard is specialist maths actually, and how scared or worried should we be? And I would say that on balance, Year 11 is probably quite a bit harder than Year 12 in specialist mathematics, which is sort of like a little bit of a paradox or something that students aren't really expecting. They're expecting Year 11 to be difficult and then Year 12 to be the hardest year in high school. Oftentimes, actually, you're going to find that's not going to be the case generally, okay? Typically, Year 11 sets up a really nice foundation. If you work well in Year 11, you can actually make your life quite a bit easier in Year 12. So there is a lot of value for putting time in. If you're someone that thought, okay, when I get to Year 12, I'm going to work really hard because that's the year that counts, I would apply that logic or that thought or that motivation to Year 11 because you can really set yourself up to make your life significantly easier going into Year 12. Okay? I would say, now I'm a specialist maths teacher, it's a little bit overblown how difficult people think the course actually is. There's two reasons why I think that. One, people that pick specialist tend to also, well, you have to be doing mathematical methods as well, okay? So you're going to be doing two very intense maths courses. Plus, you typically get a combination of physics, chemistry, maybe engineering, biology. You're normally picking quite a strong academic pathway, and what makes specialist feel harder is how much time you actually have to invest in all your different subjects. If you're picking specialist, typically you're going to be quite time poor because you're going to be picking a multiple very rigorous academic courses, and you're kind of putting a lot of pressure on yourself for getting a high ATAR. So these kind of things combine to make specialist quite difficult because unlike the other courses we're going to look at, specialist is very unique in how your previous learning fits into specialist maths and why Year 11 is the most important year really for the course. And if you do well in Year 11 and you work well in Year 11, then suddenly a lot of the barriers that make specialist really difficult start to fall away a little bit. Yes, the external exams can be challenging, but everyone sits the same external exam, and it's actually a good thing, right? Like if the external exam was easy, the subject wouldn't scale as well, and then all the value you're getting for putting your time in wouldn't be as worthwhile. So, is specialist difficult? Yes, but is it as hard as people say? No. If I flip tabs here, and we look at some of the syllabus documents, when I talk about what makes specialists unique and why do students struggle so much, in Unit 1 specifically, if you look at the topic list, combinatorics, induction of proofs, vectors in the plane, algebra of vectors in 2 dimensions and matrices, these are all things that you have never actually seen or heard of before. This is very unique, right? If you're doing physics, you did some physics in Year 10 that will feed into your Year 11 physics. If you're doing mathematical methods, you'll normally have a Year 10 advanced strand or some kind of methods preparation course that will feed into Year 11 where you've actually covered quite a lot of the foundational ideas. There's not as much new information. Specialist is unique where none of the topics you cover, unless you have a school with like specialist electives in Year 10 or they're being very creative with how they're trying to weave this content in. For most of us, all of these ideas are completely foreign, completely new, and we have no prior knowledge really to build on in order to make the course make more sense. We're really coming in a little bit blind to what the content is, and that can mean that a lot of the content feels hard, not necessarily because it's hard, but hard because it's just new information, okay? Those 5 topics, vectors you've probably heard of in science, but I promise the way we're doing vectors in specialist is a little bit different, so it's going to feel completely new as well. Proofs, you might have done a little bit of proofs, but we're going to be looking at things like direct proofs, contradiction, proof by mathematical induction. There is stuff there that is just different. There's just different. I mean, there's circle theorems as well. That might be a little bit prior knowledge, but for most of us, we're jumping into like 95% of the content we're looking at is completely new information, and that really adds to the challenge. If we scroll down here, we can see that Unit 2 is very similar. It's complex numbers, it's further proofs. It's trigonometry, which might sound familiar, but again, we're going above what we've really done before, although that is one of the topics that has the most prior knowledge, and it's something I'm going to talk about later on today as well. Then we got functions and we got transformations. So again, there's quite a lot of stuff. Unit 2, a little bit more familiar ideas, but there's still quite a lot. Complex numbers being probably the biggest topic from Unit 2. There's quite a lot of things that we've just never seen before, and that really adds to the challenge. Again, there's no real building blocks to start year 11. It kind of hits the ground running, and oftentimes that means students feel a little bit like they're just trying to catch up the whole time and never quite get there. I will say, one nice thing about specialist maths, if I go back to my OneNote where I can draw, a lot of the content has this type of curve to it, okay? Where a lot of the foundational ideas actually start off pretty easy, and it suddenly spikes up really high at the end. This means, though, that normally the foundational ideas within each of these specialist math courses, if we put in a little bit of work and we concentrate in class, we have someone who can explain it well, actually isn't too difficult. And I'm going to make a bunch of content on my channel going through a lot of these foundational ideas, so it should be something that, like the basic idea behind matrices, vectors, complex numbers, are things that are relatively easy to understand. The issue we get is how we can apply them, what questions we can ask from them, the sort of pointy end, sort of back end of the topics where we're getting most of our CFCU questions. They can suddenly feel quite different and quite challenging, but the simple familiar, the 60% part, actually is quite attainable, and I find even students that aren't super confident in their maths can do really well in the simple familiar parts of the specialist maths course. So keep in mind there's this ramp. It feels like this actually isn't too bad, and then suddenly it feels very difficult. That's a very normal thing to experience. I want to look at what are some foundational skills we need that is going to make our life easier going into specialist maths. What are some core concepts? Okay, of course, if we're picking specialist, hopefully we enjoy mathematics. That definitely makes it a lot easier, but a lot of people don't really like maths, but they're just doing it because they do decently well in it, or they're doing it for ATAR reasons. So in terms of topics or skills we need that are foundational or are things we can carry in, like I said, a lot of the topics are new, but what are some foundational skills that are going to apply to a lot of the topics that are meant to have in year 10 that can help translate into year 11? The first topic we're going to look at is, of course, algebra. Even though we're jumping into areas of mathematics like vectors, matrices, complex numbers, they're kind of the core 3 new ones that really get people into a lot of the course, a lot of it comes back to solving basic algebraic equations. Solving algebra is very important. We should hopefully be able to really solve any linear, any kind of quadratic, any kind of cubic. If we've got it like in factorized form, we should be able to identify roots or factorize the quadratic to make 3 brackets, get our solutions. And of course, this also means we should have some basic ideas of being able to sketch. Maybe I used the wrong symbol here. Let me erase this and I'll fix this slightly. Let me grab this whole thing. Let me grab it properly, pull it down here. I'll do my little bird brackets. We should be able to sketch really all 3 of these, so have a basic idea of what they look like. A lot of stuff in specialist comes down to solving algebra. It's just different context for how we get there, but it comes down to like these fundamentals of actually solving equations and finding values. That is true for methods. That's really true for all of your senior maths courses. A lot of it comes down to, okay, we have some concepts, we've done some things to it, we've applied those concepts, we've got to here, can we solve? Okay? This is really what I refer to as our finishing skills. This is how we are going to be finishing most of our questions, and as a result, it should be one of our most practiced skills by the time we get to the end of year 12. So going into year 11, just be aware of when we're using these finishing skills, how important they are, and really we want to try to build some confidence here. Like if we can get to the part where we're just solving an equation, we should pat ourselves on the back and feel good because we've done the hard part really. Now we've got the more rehearsed part of finishing off the problem. It's also a good way to analyze your own exam papers. Like if you get to the finishing point and you're struggling to finish, it's normally, like for me as a teacher, I'm a little less worried about that because you're getting the core concepts, you're getting the new information. So it's also like worth just for your feedback. If this is where you're struggling, then it's one of the easier areas to practice. We can just literally start solving equations like these, practicing different variations, and we could do, 3-4 questions a day. Really, you could do like 1 linear, 2 quad, and a cubic, or if you're just struggling with cubics, 4 cubics or whatever, 3-4 questions a day, 5 to 10 minutes, and you'll find these skills can come up very, very quickly. The second thing, and different schools have different systems for how they're planning the content. Different schools have different ways for how they're actually going about their year 10 course. Okay, so there can be some variance here. I should also say as a caveat, we were looking at the QCAA curriculum before for why the topics are new, but it's very similar to the other states as well. The same general idea applies. It's a lot of new information. It's a lot of foreign topics that we haven't really seen before, and that's part of why the course can feel quite difficult. The second skill that's very important, and it does link to algebra ultimately, but this is really like work with surds. We should be pretty good with surds. It comes up a lot. It comes up in vectors, matrices, complex numbers. They're sort of the core three, but it also comes up in our proofs. It comes up in our trig. It comes up really everywhere. Being able to do basic surd skills, and I really do mean basic. We should be able to simplify. We should be able to rationalize, simplify, rationalize, and also conjugates. Sorry, my camera was covering there. And finding the conjugate, that is really, really important for surds. And this idea of conjugates ties directly into complex numbers. So that's something that we can take in, or a word we can take in that's actually should be familiar when we get to that particular topic. So surds are really important. Between these two things, look, if you're happy here, then you're pretty well equipped to start at least with some of the core skills. And then when you introduce the topics, try to understand how the topics work. And if not, YouTube videos. Like I said, I'll be posting some content there as well. So they're really the two main strands. It's algebra and it's surds. Now, depending on how your year 10 coursework, this can be prereq for some people and it can not be for others. So I'm going to put it as number 3, but it is really, really important. If you've covered it, it's a huge advantage to make sure things are making sense. The third thing is going to be trigonometry. Okay, this is something that you can relook at before you start Unit 2, because we saw Unit 2 had the trig stuff in it. But even in vectors, complex numbers, and sorry, I've lost my train of thought there. In vectors and matrices, which are in Unit 1, you're going to be using quite a lot of trig. So specifically the area from trig, even though you can relook at like this would be more for like the sketching you could relook at for Unit 2. For Unit 1, like where you're going to be starting out the year, for Unit 1, you really need to know your exact values. So you need to know, I don't know why my X went so wild, apologies about that, but we really need to know, my head's in the way again, we really need to know our exact values. This is probably the biggest thing that will hold you back. We need to be able to do exact values from 0 to, well, actually any. We should be able to go around both ways of the circle. We should be able to go around the positive direction and also go around in the negative direction as well. Okay, and if we can do these three things, then really we're going to be going into year 11 with a very strong footing. But the trig exact value stuff, I would say, is if you haven't seen it, then your teacher should have some plan to introduce it to you. If it's something you have seen, and really from my experience, everyone is seeing this in year 10 now. If you have seen it in year 10, and hopefully you have, please revise it, because the teachers are going to assume when they do, you know, sine 30, cosine 60, they're going to assume you understand where these numbers are coming from. And if you don't understand where the numbers are coming from, you could feel very lost very quickly. Okay? So these two skills, absolutely foundational. Exact values are critical. If you've seen it, make sure you know it. If you haven't seen it, then when your teacher talks about it, little alarm bell in the back of your mind, this is very important. Very, very important, okay? So these three skills here, these three skills are the three most important skills for you to have going into specialist mathematics. We should be able to solve any algebraic equation for our basic 3 linear quads, cubics, and sketch them. We should be able to simplify, rationalize, and find the conjugate of surds to help rationalize the denominator of conjugates mainly. And also for our trig, when we get to Unit 2 specialist, we should hopefully remember how to do all our different sketches and our variations of those. And for starting the year, starting in Unit 1, for our vectors, which is a Unit 1 topic, for our matrices, which is a Unit 1 topic, we really, really need to know how to find exact values for trig functions in both the positive and the negative direction. If you haven't been shown the positive or the negative direction, then make sure you pay attention when your teacher explains that, because you're going to have to go around your sort of unit circle both ways. So it's really, really important. There's going to be so many times where we use our exact values in Unit 1 when we're doing things with vectors and matrices. If you don't know where these numbers come from, you really need to know your exact values almost perfectly before the year starts. So to wrap up, if you're starting specialist maths, thing number 1, be kind to yourself, because you're going to be doing methods. You're going to have a lot of subjects that are demanding a huge chunk of your time. So be nice to yourself. The best thing you can do is concentrate in class. do the homework set by your teacher, and start trying to build some really strong study habits. These 3 topics I have here that I've said a bunch of times, these are really important things that you can learn before your year starts. You've about a week to get your head around these. And once the topics start, keep in mind that there's this little curve that the topics go on. It starts out quite straightforward with a lot of foundational ideas. So make sure you're paying attention in those early weeks. You're applying yourself. You're asking your teachers questions. You're taking a lot of ownership of your learning. Because if you don't understand these foundational ideas, when it kind of shoots up in the difficulty towards the end of the topics, suddenly it can all feel very overwhelming. So make sure you're trying to put the work in early. Additionally, the best thing to keep in mind for specialists, year 12 actually gets easier as long as you're understanding these core concepts in year 11. All the topics you cover in year 11, you cover them again in year 12, but now, unlike year 11, you actually have a foundation to build on, and it's a big part of why year 12 feels better. I don't know if I explained that very well earlier in the video. I was meant to, but it's actually probably the most important takeaway for the video. It will get easier in year 12 if you put the work in year 11, because suddenly you can expand on existing knowledge instead of trying to build completely new knowledge like you will be doing for most of year 11. Good luck. I will post some specialist maths videos on this channel too that will hopefully help you guys out with the content side. And there's also exam paper videos already on my channel that you can watch too, especially when you get to year 12 and you're going towards your external exam. Good luck, everyone. If you have any questions about the course, please comment down below and I will answer them because I don't get many comments, so I'll answer them. So hopefully, like I said, you guys have a great year and I'll see you guys in the next video.